met Tennessee on the level that I wished I had met him later, and did, but just the reality of who he was and what he did in his life, and the amount of work that he wrote, and just didn't impress an entire generation, but probably 4 or 5 generations. And I didn't speak very well when I was going to theater school. And if you saw the film, the speech, King's Speech, I remember having to do that, put marbles in your mouth, try to straighten out certain words. And I was introduced by a lady who was a teacher of speech, and she took me away from the marbles, and we started looking at really reading poetry and really understanding syntax and understanding the beauty of the language that we all speak. And we had to write poems every week. And she took a poem of mine, and I must have been in grade 9. And she took it to her close friend, who was Robert Frost's daughter. And Robert Frost kept this particular poem, and she would always say that he still has the poem in his drawer. And from there, I got so excited that I started writing poetry, and this particular teacher wanted me to read and study and memorize all the endless poems of Carl Sandburg, which of course had a different tone to Carl Sandburg and much more reflective. And from there, when I went to college, I decided that I really wanted to run a literary magazine and produce other people and publish other people and try to put poetry on the map in those particular years. The crossover for me for the first time in producing poetry readings in Atlanta, Georgia in 1967, in the same month that the country buried Martin Luther King, and I'll never forget that parade going down Peachtree Street. And I'm sorry, I just lost where I was the idea that poetry was alive and poetry was spoken at Martin Luther King's funeral. And they repeated it over and over, these particular poems, as they marched slowly in a caisson all the way down Peachtree Street, which took about 2 miles. Very slow and very persistent. It was gorgeous. And out of that march, and all that that march encompassed and meant to so many people, it had its own cadence. And I remember hearing for the first time a cadence that didn't come off the page, a cadence that came from us, walking in and out of this gallery, a cadence for our funeral march, a cadence that was natural. And then and there I decided, that would be my cadence, that I would try to recapture that. At the same time, I was introduced to a world that really did change my life. And that was coming to grips with Donald Allen's book and all the history coming out of Black Mountain. Black Mountain was my real education, even though I had only traveled through and played, wanting to be one of the students during its more formative years. And I learned everything I could about Black Mountain. I think I read every poem. I thought I saw every particular work. If I couldn't in real life, I looked it up and studied it. And it really, again, became my education. When I thought about leaving the United States because of war, my goal was to go to Buffalo, where the residue of the Black Mountain was in, a lot of it was in Buffalo, and also part of it moved to the Bay Area. And just as I was applying to go to Buffalo to do graduate work, it was there that I was beginning to see the prominent composers that were only 10 years older, 15 years older than I was, were working at Buffalo. And I wanted to go very badly, but the government suggested that I not do graduate work in comparative literature, but to become a doctor of medicine. And that was not going to happen for me. I have no ability at all in the sciences. So I went to Montreal. And there, while I was in Montreal, I learned that one of the, I would say, literary benefactors of Black Mountain was going to be in Vancouver, which I had no idea what Vancouver was. And all I did was know that in a literary supplement that I edited in Tallahassee, Florida, were publishing poets that I so admired, and they were coming here because of Ellen and Warren Tallman, and who again became my third portion of my education. To imagine whomever they are for you, sitting in their living room, holding a bottle of beer till you think it was going to break, because there was Duncan and Creeley and so many other great poets sitting 4 feet from you, and my God, they were reading to you. I remember recently speaking with Bob Creeley at a luncheon at the Tallmans, Karen Tallman, and going up to Bob Creeley, who I'd seen a number of times, but we were having a discussion. I said, you know, I have to reveal this, you may not like this, but all through the end of high school and into college, I used to also wear an eye patch, just to prove that I was a poet. I'll wrap this up by saying the Vancouver Art Gallery was an astounding place for someone like myself. It was the early 20s. I was here because of a man named Basil Bunting, that some of you may know. And Basil Bunting was, in many ways, a great influence on a lot of writers. He also was an ambitious, arrogant, phony Persian, but gave a lot. And influenced me quite a bit. In fact, I followed him back to England after his period of time here at the University of Victoria. Spent some time there, meeting great poets from England and Wales and Ireland. And then when I returned, I realized that what I wanted to do was to find a way, without being conscious about it, to find a way to bring different disciplines together. Certainly we had Michael Goldberg, who really I so admired what he did in the city. And he was a big influence on me as well. And the idea of bringing artists and musicians and poets and playwrights, and it was just something. It's where I met Hank Bull when he was doing his little radio shows. And I was trying to write little plays. And so much was happening during that period. And that, again, was my next level of education. But the idea that there was something happening in this city that was just prime for mixture, it was just prime for overlap. It was astounding. In 1974, 73, 74, Pamela Hawthorne, who was the director of, which is now the Playwrights Theater Center, was then the New Play Center, brought really different playwrights together. And she brought all of this together with her team, and suddenly we had 8, 10 brand new playwrights whose work was reaching out to the rest of the country, and sometimes to other countries as well. And slowly but surely, I would bring musicians or composers. Some people would bring artists. We had, Pam had a fundraiser where if you bid on certain paintings contributed by Shadwell, Gordon Smith, there must have been 8 of them, Gabby Fall, Alan Wood, and there we were in a room, bidding on art, on plays that were, and all the art was named after your plays. So I had Gabby Falk, and I forgot who Dennis Foon had, but many, and suddenly we were together in a room together where many of us, unless you went to the Equinox Gallery on first Tuesdays of every month so you could get drunk for free. But the crossover started again, and that was fantastic. Tony Embry must be recognized, really, as a kind of an angel. I saw so many premieres of R. Murray Schafer here with the Purcell Quartet, and you just can't beat that even today, coming into a room like this and seeing premieres of Murray, who now is one of our great national treasures, I believe. So it's really that interdisciplinary, that excitement and that hunger and that need to cross over, for you visual artists to visit more, to go to more concerts of your work, and vice versa, and dance and theater. And it's beginning to grow in this city. But I urge all of you, the last thing I want to say really, is go to your other disciplines. They're your colleagues. They're your mates. They're in the larger scheme of an aesthetic world, which really pushes us even farther. So I just want to thank all of you for coming up absolutely overwhelmed by who's here and how many are here. And again, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Colin. Boy, so a little music, perhaps. We have 5 musicians here: Imad Armouche, Tim Gerwing, Gord Gradina, Francois Uhl, and Liam MacDonald.